Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Tote Bag Podcast. I'm your host, Vibba, and thank you so much for joining today. I always start my episodes by saying that I'm really excited, but I honestly don't even know how to feel about this one. I'm starting to really develop a love and disdain relationship with podcasting because I'm almost never satisfied with myself when I do solo episodes. When I have other people on, I love them because they carry the episode, they talk about the things that they're passionate about, and it's amazing. And I really enjoy just listening to people talk about the things that they care about. I think that is so valuable, and it's just so important to just listen to people and hear what they have to say. I think it's so simple, but really life-changing without being too dramatic. Whenever I record on my own, I always feel this pressure to get everything right on the first time. And I record so many times before I actually end up putting one up. You've probably noticed that there's not a single solo episode since I did the very first one, but I have recorded solo episodes several times since then, talking about the most random stuff, from brain dumps, just talking about whatever is on my mind, to having specific topics and things that I wanted to discuss. And every time it just never works out to the point where I'm satisfied with it, which I don't even know where that bar is at anymore, what my standards are for myself. They're just insanely high, and I don't think if I keep my standards that high, I'm really ever going to create a podcast episode alone that I feel proud of. And so I just want to work on being kinder to myself, not just with podcasting, but life in general. And that's kind of not really what I'm talking about today. I just kind of want to talk about a few things that have been on my mind within the last few weeks, last few months, to be honest. I want to do just some chill, sit down, talk podcast episodes, because there are some of those that I really love to listen to. And I don't know if there are any avid podcast listeners that are tuning in today that have listened to every single episode. And maybe there's a slight chance there's one person out there that wants me to do a brain dump. Even if there's no one, I'm just going to do it because it's fun for me. It's kind of therapeutic to just talk out loud. And I feel like if I let myself just do it at ease and not feel this kind of subconscious pressure, then maybe it'll turn out better than, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Just kind of letting loose and not really setting expectations, just talking, because I love to do that. Just kind of have mindless conversations. I think that's when you get some of your best ideas out. But let's talk about today. Today was such a bad day for me, and I'm able to recognize that now and laugh about it, but I was crying several times today, and it was kind of awkward because I sat down in one of my classes. First off, it started right in the morning. I was doing something, having a conversation with someone. Later on in the conversation, I was genuinely holding back tears when they kept asking me questions. I was like, they asked me something, and I don't even know. I was just like, yeah, my voice is getting super sparse, and I don't know, I just had to hold back tears so bad. And then the second the bell rang, I left, and I was like, I have to go to the bathroom and just cry this out. But then I thought I could control myself, so I was pushing back the tears, and I'm a crier. If you know me, you know that I cry. I'm not really the type of person to hold back my emotions. If I'm feeling a certain way, I'm very easy to read, I feel like. I personally think, at least. And so I was really trying to hold back these tears. And then, as we all know, the classic case of someone asking you if you're okay, and then everything just breaks loose. And I sat down in my class. One of my friends walked in. She was like, Vibba. And I turned to her and I literally said, I think I'm going to cry. And she said, what? And bam, tears just started falling from my eyes. I zoomed out of that class so fast, went into the bathroom. Another one of my friends walking in the hall saw me and she was like, Fuba, and I ran into the bathroom. There was someone else in the bathroom. She was staring at me. Clearly not uncomfortable, but just kind of confused. And here she was trying to just use the restroom. And I was in the next stall just crying. I don't know. It was just really chaotic. And I cried a few times later in the day, like at lunch. Oh my gosh. I called my sister to tell her about my day. And I lost it. I was crying so insanely to the point where my vision was getting blurry from the tears. It was so bad. But if this tells you anything, one, it's that the way people present themselves is not always how they're feeling on the inside. I was just not having the best day, and it got better throughout the day, but sometimes you just have those days, and I think we need to normalize having bad days. And something I talked about with my sister is how people will ask me how I feel, and again, we can all relate to, or I feel like most people can relate to, kind of feeling like you have yourself under control, and then someone asks you how you are, and then you just start crying, and it's so, I don't even know. It's so frustrating because you just felt like you kind of calmed yourself. And she was saying how we haven't really normalized the idea of comforting someone when they're crying, or just like allowing people to be upset in public. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like I think about how when kids have tantrums or I don't know, whatever in public, it's, I mean, not cute, but it's tolerated. And people are like, oh yeah, they're a kid, they're expressing their emotions. And I mean, obviously as you get older, you need to learn not to control your emotions, but kind of figure out a good balance of right time, right place. You know, obviously you can't just be lashing out every second. That's understandable. But I think we become so much more rigid as we get older, not just with our emotions, but with creativity, our imagination, the way we view the world. Everything becomes just so much more, not closed off, but I don't even know. You know what I'm saying? So why is it okay for a toddler to just be having a bad day and show that publicly, but not the average person to have a bad day and show that publicly? You know what I'm saying? And because we don't normalize having these difficult emotions in public, we build it up and we have resentment. And then it just turns into all this stuff and trauma and things that we never deal with and we don't talk about because everyone's tiptoeing around the subject. And it's just a whole ordeal. But yeah. So I guess that's a whole other thing of like finding ways to cope with your emotions, but I don't know. In conclusion, today was just a Judy Moody and a not very bad day, or whatever the book is called. You know, that was just me today, and that's okay. I think I talked about this in a podcast that I recorded and never uploaded, but we all kind of have emotions that even though we don't realize, we sort of shy away from. And for me, that emotion is sadness. I really fear being sad because my past relationship with sadness was always really intense, and I fear that intense relationship with sadness coming back into my life because I obviously didn't like how it felt, you know? And so I think I have a really difficult time allowing myself to be sad. And so I don't know. Today was just a day where I was talking to somebody about how I was feeling, and they said, you know, it's all about how you view it. You just have to like take things with a grain of salt and move on. And I totally understand that sentiment. But I'm also a big believer that you have to process your emotions before you move on from them. I think if you take everything with a grain of salt and just move on, it kind of leads to all these unresolved emotions that you never really dealt with because you're just trying to, I think, subconsciously avoid them. And I think I can be that way sometimes because I fear sadness, and so you so badly just want to move on from the hurt and be happy because that seems like the quick and easy fix, but it's just not the way things work. You know, I feel like eventually that sadness will, or whatever, you know, negative connotation emotion will come back to bite you in the butt. So, while I did take their advice, I was like, I get what you're saying, but I'm gonna have to agree to disagree because I think I'd rather process how I'm feeling. So I just let myself have the bad day. You know, sometimes you need to do that. And to be honest, part of it, this might be a TMI, but part of it might also just be because it's that time of the month and, you know, we all have our moments. But I just let myself really feel the emotions. And then I had to go to math class after, and that just did not help anything because I am not a math person. But Anywho, that's besides the point. I just got a really sweet text from a great friend of mine, and this is your sign, mid-podcast break, to go text someone that you love and tell them that you're grateful for them. Because I'm just jumping all around, and I kind of love it. I'm having fun with this, and I hope you are too. But I kind of want to reflect on all the things that have happened so far this year, because we're almost done with February, which is kind of insane. But did January feel like the longest month ever? January felt so insanely long to me, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's senioritis. I don't know. I just don't know, but January just felt so dauntingly long, and I really didn't know how to feel. After 4 weeks, I felt like I had lived through January for 2 straight months. I think it's also just because it's kind of an awkward transitional period, because every other time of the year kind of has things going on. I guess it also depends on your lifestyle and your schedule, but coming from a student's perspective in high school, I mean, your first quarter of school, it's the first day, things are all new, you're new to your classes, you're reuniting with all these people you haven't seen, yada yada, you're picking up new hobbies, new clubs, sports are beginning again. Things are just kind of reviving themselves, so you have that excitement. And then second quarter goes by relatively quickly because you have Thanksgiving break, you just got back from fall break, and then, post Thanksgiving you just have a little bit, and then winter break. So you're done there. And then you have like Christmas and all those holidays, and then you have New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and then January is just pretty bland after that, There's just nothingness. And third quarter feels so long because it's all of January and it's all of February, and then it's the second week of March, but there's just nothing going on in January and February. I mean, holidays here and there, yeah, Valentine's Day, sure, yada yada, whatever you want to consider eventful, but nothing that's really wowza energy. You know what I'm saying? Also, happy late 2/22/22. How crazy is that? I hope everyone manifested their deepest desires. I texted all my family members to go manifest their deepest desires, and I hope they did that because, I told you so. But, which that's like a whole nother thing. I really want to have a podcast all about manifesting and spirituality, because I think that has been something that has gained a lot of popularity, especially after quarantine. I think a lot of things have gained popularity with the rise of TikTok and just that culture, but I think so many people are talking about manifesting and crystals and spirituality a lot more, and affirmations, and I think it's really empowering and a really great conversation to have. But it's just so interesting to see how social media can totally shift the way that we view topics that have been around for quite some time, but we're just kind of now starting to give them a greater attention. Anywho, I'm jumping around right now. New Year's resolutions. How is everyone's going? I put something up on the Tote Bag Portfolio story to ask about New Year's resolutions, and everyone had really cool ones, so that was very fun for me to read. I personally am a New Year's resolution person because that's why I always say that New Year's is my favorite holiday, because I love the idea of getting closure from a whole year and looking back, and I love looking towards a whole new year with excitement and just being wide-eyed about the possibilities to come. So I think that can be really encouraging. But I feel like New Year's resolutions, they don't have to be goals that are just unrealistic and unattainable, because then why would you set them, But I think it is a good time for me to kind of rearrange my mind. What is important to me? What do I want out of the year? I set a few goals. I set a book goal for how many books I wanted to read. I made a bunch of lists in the beginning of my journal. I'm a huge list person, and I'm an avid journaler. I think I journal every single day, probably twice a day or multiple times. In the evening, I literally just sit down on the couch with my journal, and it's probably one of my favorite parts of the day. But I made a bunch of lists at the very beginning of my journal that had books I want to read, movies and TV shows I want to watch, things that I want to accomplish. So it's just really satisfying to kind of see all these things. And obviously at the beginning of the year, you're really excited about it, and as time goes on, it can become maybe unmanageable or things don't go to plan or whatever. But I think past years have taught me what is quote unquote realistic for me. I personally don't really think there are bounds to what you can accomplish. I think if you're determined with something and you want to do it, you'll do it. But, just kind of knowing that in the past, if you set a goal multiple years and it just never worked out, then maybe reevaluating that goal. You don't necessarily have to scrap it and throw it out, but, breaking it down into smaller actions. That's something that's really helped me, is setting New Year's resolutions, but what are day-to-day tasks that I can do to get closer to achieving this goal or resolution? You know what I'm saying? So if your goal is to read 30 books this year, you can make a goal of reading, I don't know, a certain amount of pages every day, or setting a timer for 30 to 45 minutes and reading for that amount every day. Things like that make your goals seem a little less daunting and not just, oh my gosh, read 30 books. How am I going to do that? So yeah, that's that. Something else I wanted to talk about is feeling like there is not enough space for you in whatever you're doing. Just imposter syndrome, comparison, feeling like you're not good enough, that kind of thing. That's been on my mind a bit lately too. I was dealing with that so badly last week. And I don't know. I think it also kind of came back to my podcast because someone was talking about Emma Chamberlain's podcast and how they really loved it because she just kind of talks and, I feel like Emma Chamberlain is just so well articulated with how she speaks about her emotions. And the person who enjoys her podcast was just saying that, how she's really relatable, as we all know, and she just talks and I don't know, she just talks, but like we all enjoy it because it's just relatable, and she articulates herself well, and she shares personal experiences in a way that's very vulnerable and makes you feel just not alone. And so then the thought of going home and recording a podcast episode where I was talking about my own personal experiences and things that I was dealing with just felt so inferior in comparison to someone who has such a large platform and is so cool and has like the coolest fashion sense and all these things. And I was explaining I keep bringing up all my different friends, but I have some really wonderful friends. But I was talking to another one of my friends and explaining how comparison to me has always felt in a sense of being inferior to someone else. It's not necessarily that they have things that you don't. It's just that feeling like you'll never compare to them or that they're on a different level than you. And she was like, that's so interesting because I've never thought about it that way with that specific word, inferior. And I think it's so true. But I don't know. I think we just set ourselves up to the point where we're never satisfied with ourselves. Like I was saying in the beginning with my podcast, we are so harsh on ourselves, and it makes me wonder how different, I don't mean to be cliche, but genuinely how different the world would be if everyone was just a little bit more patient and nice to themselves, if we treated people the way we did a complete stranger, assuming that we're all kind to strangers, or how we would treat strangers on a very good day that we're having. If we're having a bad day, then, it's okay, that's different, but you get the idea. I don't know, but I just think reminding myself that, yeah, Emma Chamberlain has a really cool podcast and she shares her personal anecdotes and she's really awesome, but that doesn't invalidate the fact that I also have personal stories to share and I have things to talk about, and that doesn't take away from her success. She's still killing it and doing her thing, but that doesn't mean there's not space for me, And so I think it can be that way with just so many things. I think a lot of comparison, especially in today's conversations, is mainly about physical appearance. And I think, again, it's just understanding that just because someone has a different nose than you doesn't mean you're not pretty. And just because someone has a different, you know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm going to reference 2 TikToks that I saw quite a while ago. I don't have TikTok anymore, but I saw these a long time ago, and they just really stuck with me. There are some things on TikTok that are genuinely so informative, and I love the app for that, but it's just so addictive, and I can't do it. But the first TikTok was about this girl explaining that we all drink water, and water at its core is the same thing. We need it to survive, and you'll do whatever you can if you're thirsty to get water. But when you go to the store, there are so many different brands of water. There's Smart Water, Fiji Water, Life Water, there's regular Walmart jugs of water. It really does not matter, and yet people buy so many different brands and they make space on these shelves for all these different kinds of waters. And it's just to emphasize that even though you think that you might not have what it takes to be, for example, in my case, in the podcast space, or you think you don't have what it takes to make it onto the soccer team, or you don't have what it takes to get into your dream school, which dream schools are a whole different conversation. But basically, I think we just never feel like we're good enough because there are other people out there doing it, quote unquote, even better than we could or we are. But just because of the fact that it's you and you have your own singular experiences and you're your own person and you've gone through life from your point of view and nobody else will ever 100% understand that, makes it unique and makes it worthy of having its own space. And I don't know why that didn't click with me sooner, but there is and there always will be space for you just because of the fact that you are you and that is your superpower, you know? And I think that's so mind-boggling because we just don't appreciate that fact enough that we're all so different, and that is so frustrating to us sometimes, but that is so powerful. That is absolutely so powerful. And the more I talk about it, the more I even understand within my podcast the different people that I have on or the different people I've met throughout my life that I talk to. If I was the exact same as every single person, we would never learn anything from each other. We would never grow as people because we're all the same. You know, it's just like, it's obviously hard in those moments when you're feeling inferior to put that into perspective. Someone else today told me that, you know, you have to have the bad to appreciate the good, which is obviously true, but in those moments when you're feeling those emotions, it's hard to, you know, kind of understand those concepts. But I think when you look back in hindsight or you're kind of in a clearer mood later on, you can recognize, yeah, you know, maybe I had this bad day so that I can really love the good days later on. Or, yeah, I might be different and that might make me feel a little bit off sometimes or unworthy of my space, but I need to remember that I am worthy because I'm me, and that's really the only requirement I need, you know? And the other TikTok was that this girl basically saying how she's really competitive, and the thing with life and comparing yourself to other people is that it's a race that's always rigged against you. Because if you're trying to win a race of being the best at being somebody else, you're never going to win that because you're not somebody else, you're you. You know? Does that make sense? I hope I explained that. But it just kind of ties into the larger conversation here, which is just that you are your own person and you are different. You have your own set of likes and dislikes and talents and things that you're passionate about, and you have a favorite color, and you have your favorite thing to do in the summertime, and you have your own phone lock screen, and you have your own hairstyle. There's so many things about you as a person that make you different. No person on earth is exactly 100% the same. And that is so often viewed as a weakness, but it's such an impeccable strength, and the things that we can do with that are insane. Insane, I'm telling you. So that's my little spiel about that. I think we just need to start tapping into our differences and recognizing them as really amazing things and not letting them beat us down, because I was really dealing with that badly last week. And I just felt like I'm never going to be good enough for myself, like I explained again with the podcast. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of never feeling, well, actually, I haven't been dealing with that much lately. It was just something I was dealing with last week, but kind of an overarching theme of life is just like, even when you have your periods where you're pretty good and you're not thinking about it too much, I think we always circle back to just not feeling good enough, and it's just not fun. It's just not fun to go through life never feeling like you'll measure up to this version of yourself that is really composed of all these qualities of other people that you wish you had. You know, it's obviously good to look at someone and say, you know what, they are very kind and not judgmental. I'd like to be more like that. Or they are very hardworking. I'd like to take more of that. Like, I think those things are fine, you know, about your persona, things you want to improve as a person. That's different. But looking at someone and say, I will never look as good in that dress as this person does, or I will never be as well articulated in my words and be able to speak publicly like this person does. You know, it's just a load of doo-doo. That's what that is. Anywho, I'm trying to think what else. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to me talk for the last, 25, 26 minutes. This podcast is definitely shorter than some of my previous ones, but I know that I sometimes like things that are just short and sweet, so hopefully this motivates you to listen to it the whole way through since it's not as long. But yeah, I had fun just talking about things that were on my mind, and this is my first time recording it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, so this will be up probably tomorrow, because I haven't had a podcast up in the last 2 weeks. So I'm just so fun like that. I'll just keep you guys guessing on when the next podcasts are always up. But yeah, seriously, thank you all so much for listening. It really does mean a lot to me that people care about the things that I have to say and the things that I want to share with the world. I don't really know what's more empowering than that. And I hope that, as always, you leave the podcast every time feeling like you've gained something and you've learned something about yourself or life as a whole. And there's just a lot of beauty in life. And after recording this episode, I'm feeling a lot more grateful for all that beauty. So thank you so much again for listening, and I will talk to you guys next time. Maybe I'll do another solo episode next week too, because this is really fun for me. Okay, bye!